You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. Last week we were not in effect. I'm sure you missed us, but we're going to keep this thing going. I am Kari Frazier of Detroit is Different, and every week here I have two of the best co-hosts to help me navigate a lot of what's happening with municipal politics in the city of Detroit, so you can get a better understanding, not just for this election season, but also just the functionality of what happens. And a lot of this is based on a notebook from Bridge Detroit that I just found out that it's a lot of people that are a lot more seasoned. Let's use that that are reading, but you can read it whatever age if you're interested in the grounds of what we talk about here. And there's so much more, but also just a gateway of what happens week to week in city council and much more. It is written by one of the co-hosts, Malachi Barrett of Bridge Detroit. Malachi, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm feeling good, man. The number one or two of the best podcast co-hosts in the country, in the world, in the universe. Yeah, we're going to be talking about some stuff in the City Council Notebook. Comes out every Wednesday morning. It's free. Go to bridgedetroit.com to subscribe and get the goodness.
Yes, and also just anchoring from a lens of really empowering you, for real, like advocates and advocating. Usually we think stops at lobbying because it's like lobbying seems like it's so big and so large and you need to have millions of dollars, but it's people lobbying and advocating for us. And the best way of putting it like that is we owning everything. And thank God that she's here to help anchor some of this. Tamesa Bailey, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kari. You always make me feel so special. To Mesa Bailey, we own everything, which is a political consulting company that specializes in political education, teaching people how to advocate, how to lobby. It's just like Kari said, people power works. You have enough people, you have enough power, you can do whatever you want to do. So I'm just happy to be back, happy for us to be back in studio this morning and just ready to get started.
I know. And we're getting started with actually real people power, meaning city council got a chance to do some executive things with this last bit of ARPA funding. That was something negotiated out in the last budget. So if you check the archives of Public Comment and also the notebook and just keep up with everything, ARPA funding, we're going to tell you a little bit about this ARPA funding. It kind of really starts the relationship between Detroit is Different and Bridge Detroit all together. And we're talking about the Detroit City Council is moving forward with plans to allocate more than $9.4 million in remaining pandemic relief funds from the ARPA. That is the American Rescue Plan Act. 8 council members each received $1 million to invest in existing community projects, according to federal law. These funds can't be used to launch new initiatives. They must enhance efforts already underway by the end of the last year of this program. So from stormwater upgrades to mental health services, neighborhood beautification, here's a breakdown of a lot of how that money was spent. So I'm about to just open up and then we're going to unpack some of this stuff, right? So Council Member Mary Waters, about $500,000 for accessibility improvements in St. Patrick's Senior Center. Another $500,000 for basement backup protection. So when we think of Mary Waters, because she is citywide, so citywide and at large, this is really speaking to some big problems. I mean, everybody knows what that Martyr Main drain break was in Southwest Detroit, and then even with it, when we think of the arcs, and like I want to say, like a Emmy was rewarded just for covering a lot of the flooding that was happening on the east side through Bridge Detroit early on. So we definitely know that the infrastructure in Detroit and what's happening with sewer systems is big here. And even Tamesa was touching on what was happening, and we've all gotten that one letter if you own a home saying like, do you want to secure the insurance line between the main line? That's big, right? Along with that, council member Coleman Young, the other at-large member, $1 million to mental health response initiative by hiring behavioral health specialists and 911 coordinators. That's something else that's been uplifted about like how to respond to a lot of people in these crises situations. It's actually some things happening on my block right now that are stirring up. And it's a lot of hearsay when you're in the neighborhood. And all I'm thinking to myself is, a mental health specialist would definitely be of a lot of assistance. So I just went through the at-large approach to this. I don't know who wants to take a crack at this first. Mesa, what's your take more so from both of those things, and just also thinking about this legislative body getting a chance to execute something from ARPA, which this was also very much pressed on by this city council because it was the last city council that really made a lot of the determinations of how the spending would go.
Right, you're absolutely right. So the last council did have a lot of say in what happened. I wasn't there for that, but I was there for this council and trying to figure out, are we ever going to get an opportunity to spend some of this money? We are the legislative branch, so we are the closest to the people. We are the ones who get the calls. We are the ones who know what's going on in the community. So we should have some say in how some of this money is programmed. And so now they've each been given, around $1 million to be able to put into programs, not anything new, but programs that were already created and were already being funded by ARPA. And basement backup, let me tell you, that is an issue that people call about. People have had so much hardship in certain parts of our city because of their basements being flooded. And so basement backup protection is going to be critical for a lot of people in certain areas in our city. And then mental health response from our 911 operators. That is a huge issue. I was just recently at a legislative breakfast with DWIN, and former Chief White, who is now the CEO of DWIN, was talking about the fact that, police officers are trained a certain way. They're trained to look at furtive gestures. They are trained to, kind of be on alert. And if you're in a situation where someone is having a mental health breakdown, that person can look as if they're going to be a danger to you, and you'll have a police type response to that. But if we had people who are there who are trained for mental health response, we had social workers there, if there was more money for that, then we could, bypass a lot of tragedy that happens when the wrong type of person is responding to a mental health crisis. So I think that's a really great investment.
Definitely, definitely. So, with that being said, I'm gonna keep going down this list, and then I'm gonna kick it back off to you, Malachi. Council Pro Tem James Tate, $1 million to private sewer repairs and homes impacted by the 2021 flooding. So it's a lot in that space. Councilmember Angela Whitfield Calloway, $1 million to fix flooding at Comstock Park. So like you see a lot of this going into a lot of the infrastructure spaces. You were really, really hands-on in what was happening in Southwest Detroit, which a lot of people are still like, yo, what's going on? Because the resolutions to some ain't been made right. I remember just the photos and the coverage, and that was during a freeze. But even when it's not freezing, things like this can happen as it's kind of raining all this week. What's your take on like some of this infrastructure?
Yeah, not enough is being done, basically. I was at a Wayne State. It was their public administration program had a talk on flooding and infrastructure and kind of climate resiliency last week. And I just learned that this is way bigger than, and I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on like how bad like the flooding issues here were, but it's a problem out on Belle Isle. It's a problem, beyond the floodplain in Jefferson Chalmers. Obviously, we've seen with water main breaks when something goes wrong because of a combination of old infrastructure. The pipe that broke in Southwest was like 100 years old, as well as having more stress on this old system because we're having more frequent and heavier rain events. Those like once in a century storms that basically have like a 1% chance of happening every 100 years are happening more frequently. And so yeah, our system is overwhelmed, and we're GLEWA, the Great Lakes Water Authority, is handling all the sewage that comes down from the suburbs as well. And so that is always going to have the potential of overwhelming the system closer to the river in those neighborhoods that are close to the river. I think that's why you're seeing so much focus on basement backup protection to give homes kind of a level of defense against this. There's been a lot of federal money poured into that after the 2021 flood. But yeah, we're behind. It takes a lot of regional investment. It takes, state and federal money. And without really going into too much detail, I just learned that we're pretty far behind on getting that funding. And so these things are helpful, but I think they're kind of band-aids on the overall problem. And in a couple $1 million going toward basement backup, I mean, that's going to help probably a couple hundred homes get uh, their basements protected, and I think it costs like $15,000 or something like that per house. So you can see how that would stretch. But I think the bigger problem is the pipes that are in the ground and the infrastructure that the city is managing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go a step further, and so much that I'm learning about just these infrastructures and what exists to what you speak to. My lady, Erin, she works with the Sierra Club about teaching people and installing rain gardens. A lot deals with the landscaping itself.
Mhm.
As much as you love that crisp lawn that's cut, and I'm usually going for it as well. Even here, like the pockets of a lot of that grass that we love, the triple action, that good turf, that's not good for accepting rain. It's almost like, just imagine what we look at as a great lawn is just having water soup out, right? So it's going to be what we look at as weeds, um, a lot of places that aren't as well manicured. That's going to actually soak up a lot more of that water when the rainfall happens. So rain gardens throughout the city is something also to take into consideration, but how does it aesthetically look and how do you have pieces like that? That's going to be big. I think one of the best examples that I could offer to people at the food commons, the Detroit People's Food Co-op, right? You can see a rain garden right in the middle of their parking lot, and more parking lots need to be built with this thought process of infrastructure, right? So, like, imagine parking lots instead of like a lot of that rain runoff. If you have like in the middle, you have the rain gardens to soak up a lot of that water. Like, this plays a big role in a lot of this infrastructure too, because that's another one of the big things that a lot of people still complain about is the fees associated with rain runoff. It's all like a three-card money of what's happening. So more of the ARPA funding. Councilmember Scott Benson, uh, 450,000 to 6,000 foot active pathway for a playground, 277,000 for home repairs for seniors, 175,000 to Hand of Hope violence intervention. And this is one of those interesting things because we already have so much in the shot stopper program. This is kind of looking a lot into the CVI, but it's not through the CVI process that the city kind of had, but
I'd like to get more clarity on that and the last item there, the green the block strategy. The thing with this community violence intervention program, Hand of Hope was one of the groups that bid for those contracts to implement different strategies to reduce shootings and homicides in specific like geographic areas. And there was a group that was operating on the northeast side of Detroit. It was actually a coalition of groups between Denby Neighborhood Alliance and Wayne Metro, and I think there was a third group working with them as well. And because this is the Shot Stoppers, that's right, yeah, not Shot Spotter, Shot Stoppers program is metrics based. Groups that show reductions in shootings and homicides get additional funding, and they get extended contracts with the city, while those that do not show an impact on violent crime can have their contract terminated. The latter is what happened with a group that was operating in I think Benson and part of Letitia Johnson's district. It's
3 and 4.
Yeah. They basically weren't able to show that they were reducing shootings, and so the city decided not to renew the contract. So that area lost a group that was working on this, and this funding would, basically tap Hand of Hope to try their strategy. But I have some questions about, why that particular group was picked and how it's going to kind of fit into what the city's already been doing on CVI.
And let me say that community is one that will deal with so many of those struggles. Is like even that community's the community that I think is even changing some of the challenges with now the collard green cook-off and a lot of the registration for the special events permitting, because so much has even shifted to doing a community event now, and what's needed for a community event. So what the response is, staying in the pulse of this, all of this needs to be explored and looked at. Mesa, I don't know if you want to add to this anything.
Not on the CVI conversation. I think Malachi pretty much summed it up, but I would like to go back to the infrastructure conversation, because infrastructure is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And our infrastructure is for sure aging. Like, the pipes in the ground have been there for, 100 years or so or more. Our bridges and roads need attention, right? So kudos to the council members for seeing that and trying to, at least, even if it's not going to be enough to do all of the work that we need to be done, to focusing on that. And then also just to zero in on the fact that a lot of this stuff is going to our seniors. Detroit has an aging population, and we have a lot of people who are aging out of the workforce. We have a lot of retirees. We have a lot of seniors who are in need of assistance. And so kudos to the council members for, seeing that, understanding who their constituents are and what their constituents need. I think that was important as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see here. Tisha Johnson's looking at more basement backup protection. Also, Mary Sheffield looked at a neighborhood beautification fund, adding the $1 million there, which I believe in that beautification fund also can look at and exploring a lot of rain gardens that are uplifted. Councilmember Gabriela Santiago Romero, renewed Detroit home repair program, and Bridging Communities Outreach, and Councilmember Durhal to expand Grow Detroit's Young Talent, $500,000 there. Also support nonprofit organizations, and Matrix Human Services, Housing Navigation, which all kind of are really built in community. A lot of like community and how to invest in, add in and pour into community, as you see like some of the funding for where the ARPA funding would go and support things that have already like in infrastructure been delivered. So now I guess like as we step back and we look at what is now moving forward, that won't be. It's been one of the biggest questions that we've had with Detroit Next. Check the newest episode with Council President Mary Sheffield and also mayoral candidate Mary Sheffield of Detroit Next. That collaboration between Bridge Detroit and Detroit is different, and that big question of moving forward, the relationship with the White House, especially with ARPA funding, it's not going to exist. A lot of the ARPA funding specifically was not meant to like create jobs or create programs that are supposed to be sustaining, but just boost things. But it's like six in one hand, half dozen in the other. Clearly, I believe a lot of that funding did bolster like new initiatives that now communities really do appreciate. The way that a lot of the candidates have answered, which I mean, it's like, who's to say, like, I mean, I'm they're not necessarily supposed to answer to my quote unquote liking per se, but the way they're going about saying to themselves they're going to have less to work with, I don't know to like what hit, how it'll move forward, what will be. It's a lot of discussions about philanthropy stepping in. It's other discussions about building stronger relationships with Lansing. It almost seems like we're going back to the key discussion points of where Detroit was like years and years ago. So when we think about like ARPA funding and what this did, how do you think residents will respond? So less on the candidates when something like this isn't there to how things function, because I think from a resident's lens, we just look at it like, yo, I love that this happened and I want to see more of this. And now it looks like it won't exist. I'm gonna kick it off to you first, Malachi.
Yeah, I mean, what do you? I'm thinking about this, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, what are the most impactful ARPA projects, or the ones that residents are most likely to know about, right? I think a lot of these social programs that are going away, I'm not sure how widespread they are and how much they'll be missed, but I think they're going to have a huge impact to the folks that can't take advantage of them anymore. And so when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about like Skills for Life, some of these job training programs that were paying people to go back to school and get an education and get certified for higher skilled positions. You think about all the demolition that's been done. Are people going to miss that? I mean, we're kind of getting to the end of that anyway. We've torn down most of the inventory that we need to take down. So I don't know if that's going to be something very top of mind for folks. I always think about the amount of money that's been invested in parks and public spaces and rec centers through ARPA. Renovated, I don't know, probably like a dozen of our
rec centers
using that money.
Coleman Young just
that's right.
Just reopened.
I was about to say
one of my first places where I was really swimming, but there we go.
You ever box in the gym there? I was looking at some of the photos from the event.
No.
Williams Rec is reopened as well.
Yeah. So I mean, we've and I think we've built a new rec center in D7. So those don't need ARPA funding to continue to to do what they're doing, but those are some big things that have been secured through that money. And then obviously we were just talking about shot stoppers. I mean, the city is going to the state to pass legislation that would create some money to keep that program going. Right to counsel, our eviction defense program. I think it would be a disaster if that were to go away. There's an assumption that state and philanthropy and maybe corporate partners are going to step in and fill some of this gap, but I don't know. That might be wishful thinking. I don't know if we can really rely on that, especially when we're not hearing specifics about like who's stepping up to commit this. It's just kind of like a vague, yeah, we're going to raise philanthropic money. Well, I mean, we've been doing that for a long time in this city already. So I don't know if they step up the amount of money. I don't know. But yeah, what would residents miss? I mean, I think they're going to miss like the home repair programs. I think they're going to miss some of the infrastructure improvements that they're seeing in their neighborhoods. I think that's the stuff that is, noticeably been changed. And I don't think people associate that with ARPA. Maybe a lot of folks don't even know what ARPA is. And so when the city says, sorry, we can't do this anymore, I don't think a lot of folks are going to necessarily understand why it's going to look like they're cutting the budget or cutting funding for these things.
Yeah. So to Mesa, same question.
Yeah, I think definitely home repair program, as that was been able to be a lot more robust and get a lot more, things done through the ARPA funding. I think the pulling back of that is going to be something that people might notice. And I think the workforce development programs for sure are going to be something that people notice that are gone. And then people have to remember, as Malachi was mentioning about the ARPA funding, and do you understand why we got the ARPA funding? Well, it's because we had a pandemic, right? So if we don't have another pandemic, we won't have another infusion of cash. And so these ARPA dollars were there for us to come out of the pandemic and to invest in our infrastructure, invest in our rec centers, invest in our people. And so now, because a lot of that is going away or it has to, be spent by a certain amount of time, we are going to be looking for, other ways to fund these kinds of things. But as Malachi mentioned, a lot of it was just one-time investment into our rec centers, right? You don't have to worry about that not continuing. That's already done. That's already, the rec centers are already fixed up. And so I think that was a benefit to us, is being able to use that money to do those one-time things. But of course, those programs that are going away, we don't necessarily know if we're going to be able to get philanthropic dollars to fill in those gaps. And so I think that's where we're going to see the most of people not understanding what's going on, with why these programs are going away and why now I can't get my home repaired or other things like that. And I think that's kind of where we'll see that friction.
Most definitely. And then even when we think about philanthropic dollars, we consistently tie to other programs like back in the day of a Duggan with the DMC and the collection that was pouring into not just the EAA, but like selecting these select neighborhoods to pour investment into. And that's kind of where we get a lot of the work that was done around Osborne, a lot of the work that was done around Marygrove, these select communities, and how certain communities felt ostracized from those projects because it's like, you're just picking these neighborhoods, but what about my neighborhood? It's tough. It's tough. This is the work of Skillman comes to mind. So many other organizations at the time that were looking to do something for the people, but then how do you even pivot and move forward? It's heavy. I was at an event where I think we want to bring him on as a guest. Glenn Wilson was hosting with leadership from Hudson Weber, from Kresge, and the Pistons about how philanthropy and community work together and how they're looking to like supplement certain things to bolster more impact. So like the ideas of like hiring the right officers that could work in tandem in government to execute things. I don't know how much philanthropy is looking to pour in more because I don't know where necessarily philanthropy is standing right now too. So it's a lot of questions of we don't want Detroit to start looking like the Spider-Man meme where like, it's like all the Spider-Mans pointing at each other of like who's responsible for things. But these are things to take into consideration. With it, it's good to see kind of like just that lens of where each council member is standing with some funds, and in response to like I guess that's squeaky wheel getting the oil. The people that are going down to council, advocating, organizing in their community, connecting with council, and being that active constituent, that resident to stay present. So that's heavy. With that being said, this is another episode of Public Comment through Detroit is Different. Thanks for all the support. I know we missed last week. It's rare, but different things happen. Y'all know we lead regular lives too. So in that, just know that all the support is welcome. I see more and more people are watching, and I expect this will carry on and continue. Something will be definitely actively happening with candidates. We just in the pot mixing what that will look like. But for that, thank you all both. And I'm saying that for Detroit is Different. Make sure you checking out Detroit is Different. A lot of cool stuff with Detroit is Different coming up. Other than the Detroit Next with Mary Sheffield, Detroit is Different. We'll have Bryce Detroit on. So you can check that episode along with Bryce Detroit, Victoria Camille that's joining us for like the final installment of our George Floyd moment, and also running for police commission in D7, which we need to talk a little bit about police commission on here too. And along with Victoria and Bryce, Sean Morbray, author with the book. With all of that being said, Malachi, tell the people what they need to know.
Come on down to bridgedetroit.com. That's where we got all your free news for the people. We're a nonprofit news organization, so we really can't do this without the support of our readers. I am covering city council every week in this newsletter, which always has a bunch of stuff that we don't talk about on the show because there just wouldn't be time. So there's jam-packed with other information about what your city government is up to. And we are interviewing candidates one at a time for 2025 elections. We're almost through the mayoral field right now, which is saying a lot because there's like 10 of them. So our episode with Mary Sheffield will be up soon on our YouTube channel. Just look up Detroit Next, and you should find it there. It's also on Spotify and all the places you find your podcast. But just keep checking in with us, and appreciate everybody for listening every week to the show.
Also, to Mesa, let the people know what's happening with We Own Everything, another one of those collaborations where some information about political education is coming. What's happening over that way?
Yes, we own everything. So I'm really looking forward to rolling out our political education videos in partnership with Detroit is Different. We're going to be talking about public authorities. We're going to be talking about, why is Lansing so important? Why is the city a city? Why do they have the power that they have? Just really trying to give people the ins and outs on how this government thing really works, right? I feel like we just assume that people kind of understand stuff, but we never go back to the basics. So very much looking forward to that coming out. So that we own everything is political education. Education is empowerment, so that is really important for us. And then one more thing on the ARPA funding, I wanted to say shout out to member Durhall for investing in our youth. Grow Detroit's Young Talent is one of a really great program that the city runs. When I was chief in Member Calloway's office, we had Grow Detroit Young Talent interns every summer. And they were a lot of times very outstanding. And so I just wanted to shout him out for that because our young people, our next generation, are going to be the ones that, kind of carry us through to the other side. So I appreciate him for that. And I'm looking forward to all the political education and all the political activity that's going to be taking place in the city.
Most definitely. Most definitely. With that being said, we're going to go. Peace. You're watching Public Comment, every Thursdays at 8 a.m. the live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.